Exclusive contracted novel by Feilu Novel Network. Wuxia. I am a Wine Sword Immortal, and my third life has been exposed on the Golden List. Su Bai traveled through the world of immortal swords and became a Wine Sword Immortal. Unexpectedly, when he went down the mountain to seek wine and arrived at Su Zhao's Tingqiao Pavilion, he realized that it was a world of comprehensive martial arts that was blended with countless martial arts worlds. A cultivation master mixed in with martial arts. Dimension reduction strike. The imperial sword rides the wind, dispelling demons from the heavens and earth. After drinking the river and swallowing the sun and moon, 1,000 cups of drunkenness will not fall, only I, the Wine Sword Immortal. Su Bai smiled and didn't think much anymore. She just wanted to drink more wine at the Tingqiao Pavilion, train the sword god, and play with her own maid, Xianxia. Unexpectedly, the crown prince wanted to go to the city of Emperor Wu and unexpectedly found out that there were immortals in the Tingqiao Pavilion. He licked his face and wanted to invite Su Bai out of the mountain. And at this moment, the golden list descended, counting the strongest swordsmen in the world. As a Wine Sword Immortal, Su Bai rode the wind with his sword to eliminate demons from the world. Ranked 3rd. In the past life, Jing Tian, who killed the evil sword immortal, ranked 2nd. When searching for wine in the human world, he changed his name to Lu Bai and once fought in Tianyi, ranking 1st. At this point, the world shakes. The crown prince looked dumbfounded and said, "Boss, Dad, no, brother. Law, this is my second sister Su Weisheng." Feilu Novel Network reminds you that this novel and its characters are purely fictional. If there are any similarities, they are purely coincidental and should not be imitated. If there is him in the first chapter, the world is free for you to gallop. You are listening at novelfull.audio. If there is him in the first chapter, the world is free for you to gallop. But it is said that the man slaughtered the Xiongnu in the army at the age of 10, starting from the killing of the Xiongnu in Jinzhou, northeast China. He went south all the way to annihilate the 6 kingdoms, big and small, slaughtering more than 70 cities, then marched southwest again, and finally suppressed the 16 barbarian tribes in the southwest. After this battle, the world was settled, and the great general was awarded the title of King of Daliang for his extraordinary achievements. It is now my Daliang Su mansion. The Prince of Liang faced off against the Northern Mang for 20 years. The Northern Mang dared not go south to graze horses, and our 300,000 Daliang army guarded the border. The Dali border has remained stable to this day. Today we will talk about how the Prince of Liang started his life, bloody battle in Jinzhou City. Dali Dynasty, Liangzhou City. In front of the bustling city of Gulan, many people in Liangzhou are drinking tea and listening to the opera here. I only heard that Mr. Shu was stunned with a clap, and there was a burst of cheers from the audience. "Sir, I'm tired of listening to this bloody battle of Jinzhou. Can you tell me more about the story of the King of Liang slaughtering the 6 kingdoms and conquering the world back then? Just talk about how the general wiped out the 6 kingdoms in the Central Plains, that's what makes it so satisfying." The city walls were filled with cheers, but at this moment, in the grand and solemn De Liang Wang mansion located in the center of Liangzhou City, the atmosphere was extremely solemn. The servants of the royal family were too grand to breathe, trembling as they looked at the woman leading a horse in the distance. "Crown Prince, you have arrived. Second princess is waiting for you." The old butler, with a bitter face, pointed to the woman not far away who was leading a horse to drink water and said. Su Xiaoyan quickly ran over and didn't forget to turn his head and wave his hand, urging the servants who were watching to quickly leave. Su Xiaoyan leaned forward and looked at the woman in white with a flattering expression on his face. But the woman's body paused slightly, and when she turned her head, her skin was like snow, and the autumn water was divine. Under her 2 willow eyebrows, there were a pair of fox-like eyes, charming and lively. What is most unforgettable is her temperament, 3 parts cold and 7 parts cool, like the blooming snow lotus in the white snow, holy and beautiful. At first glance, it is evident that she is a stunning woman with both talent and beauty. This woman is Su Weisheng, the second princess of the Daliang prince's mansion. The gentle breeze blew, and Su Weisheng danced lightly in his Confucian robe. He turned his head to look at Su Xiaoyan, with a hint of coldness in his eyes. Second sister, are you in a hurry to leave now? Su Xiaoyan secretly clenched his embroidered winter knife around his waist, afraid of being snatched away by his own second sister. Who in the Su mansion doesn't know the strength of this second princess? A weak woman dares to go to the border battlefield and fight against the most elite iron harrier of Western Xia. Now I am bowing under the gate of the Imperial Academy, and my swordsmanship and strategy are unparalleled in the world. Su Xiaoyan naturally knew that his second sister was not easy to deal with, so he took extra precautions in advance. Who is your sister? Su Weisheng glanced coldly at his younger brother, especially the knife on by Xiaoyan's waist, which really made her look more and more unpleasant. Sister, calm down and I'll just practice a knife, won't it? You've been away from home for 3 years, why haven't you had a smiling face? Su Xiaoyan accompanied him with a smile, muttering with a flattering expression on his face. To sum up, since he returned from Wudong to Daliang Prefecture, my second sister has received news that she has returned from the academy. Now, 3 whole days have passed, and Su Weisheng has been locking himself in the room until now when Su Xiaoyan finally saw his second sister. But judging from Su Weisheng's attire, he always has a posture of walking. I'm not angry if I don't see you, but when I see you, I'll say something else, Su Weisheng said softly. Red Snake, let's go. Upon hearing this, Su Weisheng's intelligent BMW also raised its head and spat disdainfully at the crown prince. Didn't you spend the whole year at home? Su Xiaoyan wiped his face and looked surprised, but before he could finish speaking, he saw Su Weisheng glanced at the sky and then turned over and mounted his horse, heading towards the gate of the royal mansion without looking back. Sister. Su Xiaoyan gritted his teeth and couldn't figure out why his second sister didn't let him practice martial arts. As he saw the somewhat desolate figure walking further and further, Su Xiaoyan clenched his fist slightly. If you don't practice martial arts, have you been guarding the royal mansion like a playboy all along? Big sister married to Jiangnan, and second sister, you only return home after 3 years in the palace. Now even the barbarians are going to Longhu Mountain. Does this family still look like a home? Upon hearing the voice of Su Xiaoyan coming from behind, Su Weisheng's horse suddenly stopped. Su Xiaoyan thought that Su Weisheng had changed his mind, and finally a faint smile appeared on his face. Before waiting to come forward, Su Weisheng turned his horse head and stood there quietly. After a long time, Su Weisheng couldn't help but sigh and whispered, if you insist on practicing martial arts, second sister won't stop you. But second sister hopes you know that whether it's big sister, me, or little man, it's not anyone who forced us out, but we voluntarily do it for this family. For the sake of this family. Isn't that lame person afraid of things? He has been huddled in this royal mansion for years, ignoring the criticism of those sour scholars outside. A good family has been demolished in disarray. Since he is afraid of things, let me handle them. I learn martial arts not only for old Huang, but also for myself. Su Xiaoyan couldn't help feeling a bit excited when he said this. Su Weisheng saw Su Xiaoyan's emotions like this, and a hint of concern flashed in his eyes. She has a strategic mind and is a top-notch talented woman in the world. Su Weisheng can naturally see what kind of dilemma the Su family is currently in. As the only king with a different surname in the Dali dynasty, Su Shao is now in theft. After the death of Emperor Taizong, the current Song dynasty official family ascended to the throne for 3 years, during the peak of the spring and autumn period. Looking at their Daliang Su family, it is even more displeased. If there were a war, the Su family would indeed be the pillar of the Dali dynasty, but more than 20 years ago, after Su Shao pacified the world, the Dali dynasty had no more wars and has remained stable until now. Now, the 300,000 iron cavalry of Daliang is like a knife hanging above the emperor's head, making him restless in sleep and food. In addition, Wen Chen has always regarded generals as a thorn in the eye, and many Chinese officials in the court have criticized the Su family. The original intention of Su Xiao allowing her to enter the academy was to ease the conflict with the civil servant class, but now it seems that it is a drop in the bucket. The court is eager to dismember the great suffering of De Liang. For the court, what they want is a playboy prince, not Su Xiaoyan who practices martial arts. If Su Xiaoyan practices martial arts, it means he will take on the heavy burden of the Su family. But is Su Xiaoyan really prepared at this time? After pondering for a moment, Su Weisheng finally spoke up and said, "Xiaoyan, you must think carefully. This is a road that cannot be turned back. Once you step onto it, you will have to carry the entire Su family forward. Have you really decided?" Upon hearing Su Weisheng's words, a hint of unprecedented firmness appeared on Su Xiaoyan's face. "Sister, I've figured it out." Upon hearing this, Su Weisheng stood upright by the lake, his gaze involuntarily drifting towards the Tingqiao Pavilion across the lake. "If you insist on going to the rivers and lakes, it will be extremely dangerous. If you insist on going, go find someone on the top of the Tide Pavilion. If there is someone there, the world is yours to gallop on." Chapter 2. Listening to the Immortals in the Tide Pavilion. Deep and unfathomable. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Listening to the Immortals in the Tide Pavilion. Deep and unfathomable. Listening to the Tide Pavilion. Su Deshizi looked bewildered. He used to go to that place every day, except for the time when he wandered in the martial arts world and stayed in Wudong. Su Xiaoyan had to go there every day, constantly in the cold and summer. The reason is also very simple. His master, Mr. Li Yishan, who is known as the Poisonous Master by the world, lives in the Tingqiao Pavilion. Although the previous crown prince was a jerk, he understood the principle of respecting teachers and valuing morality in his heart. Moreover, Mr. Li has taught him too much. How could Su Xiaoyan not be grateful for his teaching? But at this moment, Su Xiaoyan couldn't help but wonder. He went to the Chao Gu every day, and there lived his master and Uncle Song, who was looking at the attic. Apart from these two, where else was there? Can't my master be a peerless expert? As soon as this idea appeared, it was quickly denied by Su Xiaoyan himself. "My master is a weak scholar. When I accompanied Su Jizi on his southern and northern expeditions, my master also suffered from wind and cold and fell ill. He couldn't leave the Tingqiao Pavilion all year round. Even in the scorching summer, he had to keep the fire burning. How could my master be an unparalleled expert? As for the Wei grandfather who guarded the pavilion, it is even more impossible." Since he remembered, Wei grandfather has been listening to the guard of the Chao Pavilion and has never shown any signs of martial arts skills for more than 20 years. After much thought, Su Xiaoyan was still full of doubts. "Sister." Su Xiaoyan looked at Su Weisheng in front of him, hoping that second sister could give him an explanation. "There is still someone inside the Tide Pavilion. If you can invite him out of the mountain, I can rest assured that you will leave the martial arts world." At this moment, Su Xiaoyan suddenly realized that when his second sister mentioned the person on the Tingqiao Pavilion, her expression seemed somewhat unnatural. In her longing, there seemed to be a hint of shyness and longing. What situation is this? The more Su Xiaoyan thought about it, the more he felt something was wrong. He couldn't help but ask, "Second sister, please don't tease me. I've been in the Tingqiao Pavilion for so many years, but I haven't seen the person you're talking about." Upon hearing Su Xiaoyan's rebuttal, Su Weisheng, who had always been calm, surprisingly changed his face in a rare way. He was a bit angry and even showed a hint of his little daughter's expression. "If you want to go, you can go. I don't want to go to Emperor Wu's city to collect your body in the future. If you can invite him out of the mountain, you can go anywhere in this world. Just want to sit on Emperor Dali's dragon chair without any problem." At this moment, two hunchbacked old men are gathered in front of the chessboard in the Chao Pavilion, studying the game. "Master, tell me about you. It's been so many years now, can't you let me have a few sons? The old man who spoke not only had a hunchback but also a limp, but he was wearing a purple python robe, not angry and imposing like a sick tiger. Li Yishan laughed heartily and stroked his beard, saying, Your Highness, for so many years, your chess skills are still as good as we first met back then. If I let your Highness, it would be too deliberate. Upon hearing this, Su Xiao couldn't help but feel a bit embarrassed on his face. My military strategist is not only cunning but also a top-notch poison tongue in the world. Watching a game of chess fall like a mountain, Su Xiao smacked his lips and walked to the window, where he happened to see Su Weisheng riding his horse across the lake and Su Xiaoyan coming towards the tide pavilion. This kid finally came. Su Xiao sighed with a sigh of relief, but the expression on his face was not relaxed at all. The matter of Xiaoyan depends on whether the person above his head nods or not. Su Xiao couldn't help but murmur in his heart. The crown prince's trip is extremely dangerous. The prince needs to be prepared for two things. If that person doesn't leave the mountain, what should we do? Master, my old face can make that person stay in the Tingqiao Pavilion for 10 years. It has been used thoroughly, and whether I can persuade that person to leave the mountain in the end depends on Xiaoyan's fate. Li Yishan's face was also solemn, and Su Xiaoyan was his only disciple. The martial arts world is so dangerous, it is false to say that he is not worried. But only in this way can Su Xiaoyan complete his transformation as soon as possible and become a qualified successor to De Liang. But what Su Xiao said is also true. The martial arts world is dangerous. This time, Su Xiaoyan has a determined heart to go to that place to get his sword, and he will definitely face a close call. If that person doesn't leave the mountain, it's really a troublesome matter. Dong dong dong. As they were speaking, a sound of footsteps came from behind. Su Xiaoyan walked quickly up to the attic, watching his father discussing something with his master. However, Shitzi didn't hesitate and walked directly to Li Yishan, giving him a real slap. Please pay my respects to master, disciple. Li Yishan and Su Xiao exchanged a glance, knowing that no matter how worried they were, it was no use. After all, Su Xiaoyan was the protagonist this time, and we had to see if he had any eye contact with him. You stinky kid, just pay respects to your master, where's dad? Su Xiao spoke with an unhappy expression on his face. Unexpectedly, Su Xiaoyan seemed to have not heard Su Xiao's words, but instead asked in a mysterious low voice, Hey, Su Gizi, I heard from second sister that there is a peerless master living on the top floor of the Qiao Pavilion. Su Xiao remained calm, but his heart was filled with joy. It seemed that his plans were not in vain. It seemed that Su Xiaoyan was really interested in the person at the top of the Tingqiao Pavilion. This is a secret of my Su family. How did your second sister tell you? Su Xiao pretended to be surprised, and Su Xiaoyan, who was standing beside him, immediately believed Su Weisheng's words. At this moment, Li Yishan took another sip of tea from the side and said leisurely, Listen to the Immortals in the Qiao Pavilion. It's unfathomable. Upon hearing these words, Su Xiaoyan suddenly came to his senses. If even someone who is so strict with their own master said so, then this matter must be true without a doubt. From the rooftop of the Qiaoga Pavilion, there really is such an immortal-like figure. Su, my second sister asked me to invite this person to accompany me into the martial arts world. Do you think so? Upon hearing Su Xiaoyan's question, Su Xiao could only sigh and say, It would be best if you could persuade this immortal to come out of the mountain. You can rest assured to go to dad like this. However, this immortal does not eat human fireworks. As a father, I only hope that you can give it a try with a few incense sticks from back then. Is it so mysterious? Upon hearing this, the crown prince couldn't help but exclaim in surprise, but without hesitation, he spoke up and said, How can we get into the top floor? I want to try going up. Anyway, you won't die at first glance. If you could persuade this person out of the mountain, wouldn't it be like having an extra thug to escort him? Upon hearing this, Su Zhao's expression remained unchanged on his face, but he had no confidence in his heart. Knowing a son is like a father, Su Xiaoyan knows that Su Xiaoyan is not as playboy as he appears outside, but he still has some youthful vigor. Can you invite that person to come out of the mountain? Su Xiao has no idea in his heart. Carefully taking out the key from his sleeve, Su Xiao walked to a bookshelf and searched there for a while before finally inserting the key. Then, accompanied by a creaking sound, a staircase slowly appeared in front of Su Xiaoyan. Without hesitation, Su Xiaoyan climbed the stairs, and as soon as he stepped onto the top floor of the Tingqiao Pavilion, he saw a somewhat familiar face. After pondering for a moment, Su Xiaoyan finally came to his senses and said, "Are you Qingniao?" Chapter 3. Sword God Bending Over, Nuclear Weapons Supporting Gallbladder. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. Sword God Bending Over, Nuclear Weapons Supporting Gallbladder. Are you Qingniao? Su Xiaoyan froze in place. The woman in front of him had a cold and beautiful appearance, which was truly pure and unparalleled. Paired with that green robe, it is even more elegant and refined, like a blooming green lotus by the water, wholly like the person in the painting. But what shocked Su Xiaoyan was not the appearance of the woman in front of him, but her identity. Because Qingniao used to be his maid. Su Xiaoyan vaguely remembers this extremely distinctive woman. Although Qingniao suddenly left his yard at a few years old and rarely appeared in the royal palace afterwards, Su Xiaoyan still vaguely remembers Qingniao. There are various speculations and rumors about Qingniao in the mansion. Unexpectedly, it turns out that Qingniao is here. Who are you, dare to break into the Tingqiao Pavilion without permission? The woman across from her spoke coldly, and her gaze was even more icy, locking onto Su Xiaoyan. Su Xiaoyan. What? This is the mansion of the Prince of Daliang. Surprisingly, someone would ask him who he is. Su Xiaoyan was speechless for a moment. As the crown prince of Liang, he was stopped by a maid in his attic and asked who he was. Even if we set aside this layer, Qingniao used to be his maid, but now Qingniao has no impression of him at all. Su Xiaoyan suddenly felt a tingling sensation on his scalp. If we had left the previous Su Xiaoyan behind, he would have caused a big uproar at this moment. However, since Lao Huang had an accident, Su Xiaoyan has become much more calm. Coupled with Su Xiao and Li Yishan's indirect attacks just now, Su Xiaoyan knows that the owner of this floor is definitely not ordinary. Back then, Su Jizi wiped out the 6 kingdoms and became known as a personal butcher. People regarded Su Xiao as a murderous demon, and beneath his throne as the Prince of Liang, there were countless bones. Su Zhao's name was simply enough to stop children from crying at night. The presence that can make Su Xiao speak so politely from behind must be one of the most extraordinary people in this world. If he turns his face this time, there will be no more opportunity to invite this person out of the mountains. Sister Qingniao, I'm Su Xiaoyan. Have you forgotten? We used to go fishing together when we were kids. Su Xiaoyan accompanied his smiling face, trying to get close to Qingniao. But at this moment, Qingniao still stood horizontally in front of the door, seeming to have no intention of letting him pass. I don't remember that. Besides, how can you prove that you are Su Xiaoyan? Qingniao asked coldly. This question left Su Xiaoyan speechless. How can I prove that I am myself? Who doesn't know what Su Xiaoyan looks like in this royal mansion? Does he still use his own proof? It was Su Xiao who sent me here. Su Xiaoyan had no choice but to bring out his own father, but to his surprise, Qingniao across from him still refused to accept it. Sorry, my young master said that neither Su Xiao nor anyone Su Xiao sent will be seen. Damn it! Su Xiaoyan was so angry that he almost cursed the street. At this moment, he could no longer suppress his anger. Soft doesn't work, Su Xiaoyan is ready to come hard. But just as he pressed on the handle of the embroidered winter knife, he saw a flash of blue light in front of him. In the blink of an eye, Qingyao arrived in front of him, and then flew up and landed a firm knot on Su Xiaoyan's stomach. Bang! With a loud bang, Su Xiaoyan was seen climbing and falling down the stairs. Su Xiaoyan became angry and glanced at the old man beside him who was drinking tea. Su Xiao scolded, "Su Jizi, I was beaten. You don't care." Su Xiao calmly took a sip of tea and pretended not to see. Seeing that Su Xiao remained silent, Su Xiaoyan's heart was even more suffocated at this moment. He couldn't even fight or enter. What's the point of this? Who is the second elder sister looking for? Liang Wang's residence or the Su family? Well, if you don't want to help or force me, I really don't believe it anymore. Without this person, I can still die on the road. After speaking, Su Xiaoyan simply sat on the ground and gave up the task. Wait a minute. At this moment, the voice of Qingyao suddenly came from upstairs. Since second princess asked you to come, then go in. Upon hearing Qingyao's words, it was Su Xiaoyan's turn to wonder. What was the situation? On the top floor of the Tingqiao Pavilion, Su Jizi's name was not as good as his own second sister's name. Su Xiaoyan naturally won't miss this opportunity. Compared to saving face, it's more reliable to be affordable. I saw Qingyao give way to a passage, and Su Xiaoyan walked into it. However, he found that this floor was the same size as the several floors downstairs, with simple yet rustic decorations. After entering, Su Xiaoyan raised his eyes and saw a young man in black sitting at a tea table. This young man is handsome and upright, full of vitality like jade, and his eyes are like shining stars in the night sky. Although the young man in his early 20s before him still had a slightly green face, the sharp radiance in his eyes and the gentle smile on his lips gave a sense of maturity far beyond his age. The young man held a wine gourd in one hand, as if carrying an ethereal feeling, unlike people in the world. Across from the young man, there were still two people sitting. One of them was clad in white armor, with sword eyebrows and starry eyes, and behind him lay a long spear. There was another one-armed old man with white beard and hair on the side, dressed in a dirty sheepskin fur, looking somewhat messy. Su Xiaoyan walked in, but these three people seemed to be completely unaware, drinking on their own. Su Xiaoyan was about to speak, but at this moment, he saw a sudden change happening. The old man with sheepskin fur and the young man with sword eyebrows seemed to have made an agreement. Suddenly, he picked up his wine glass and sprinkled it in front of him. Then, the old man with sheepskin fur bent his finger and flicked it. The young man on the side also threw a punch, and their targets were both black-clad youths sitting there holding a wine gourd. Today, Su Xiaoyan's vision is naturally different from before. At a glance, he can see the details on the old man's sheepskin fur hands. He can only see the old man holding up a drop of water with one hand, and soon the water droplet will roar out like an arrow. The young man beside him shook countless strong winds with a punch, and the terrifying waves almost lifted Su Xiaoyan away. Su Xiaoyan was shocked in his heart. What kind of mysterious and terrifying means is this? At this moment, Su Xiaoyan couldn't help but worry about the young man sitting by the tea table tasting wine. However, in an instant, Su Xiaoyan suddenly heard a faint smile coming from beside him. Good wine. Without enough time to regain their composure, the two people across from each other suddenly shrank their pupils. The old man in sheepskin fur couldn't help but let out a muffled groan. The young man next to him was even more miserable, as he was directly thrown out by an invisible force and then fell heavily to the ground. The drink instantly fell to the ground. However, Su Xiaoyan was even more miserable. It seemed that there was a huge stone weighing 1,000 pounds on Su Xiaoyan's chest, making it difficult for him to practice breathing. A strong sense of disgust surged in his heart, and Su Xiaoyan felt the world spinning in front of him. The terrifying pressure almost made Su Xiaoyan faint. Only the young man in black, still holding the wine gourd in his hand, drinking wine on his own. At this moment, the old man with sheepskin fur finally breathed a sigh of relief and struggled to stand up with his waist. He looked at the young man in black with a displeased expression and said, "Stop fighting, stop fighting. I promised you to keep your hands today. You really won't give me any face. If it were to be reported today that you let the sword god bend down and use nuclear weapons to support you, how would Su Xiaoyu and I still be in the martial arts world in the future?" Chapter 4 Persimmon. I have confirmed this brother. In law. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Chapter 4 Persimmon. I have confirmed this brother. In law. The old man with sheepskin fur stood up with his waist supporting him, looking at the young man in black with an unhappy expression on his face. "I'm an old bone, sooner or later I'll be broken up by your kid." Upon hearing this, the young man in black smiled and said indifferently, "Martial arts in the world are all about mutual verification and improvement." Seeing this scene, Su Xiaoyan's heart was filled with shock. These three people's martial arts are all to the point where he can't even understand them. The old man in sheepskin fur becomes a soldier with a drop of water, using it as his own arm. The young man in white is as agile as the wind, and just the strength of his fist is enough to shake mountains and rocks. The scariest thing was still the young man in black, who didn't move from beginning to end, but knocked the two people in front upside down. Su Xiaoyan didn't know whether it was the young man in black who acted too quickly or the person who didn't act at all. He had never seen such a sparring even when he was in Wudong Mountain. Without a doubt, these three are rare martial arts masters in the world. Young man Su Xiaoyan, I have met three seniors. Su Xiaoyan's mind suddenly became agitated, and he had never heard of or seen the methods of these three. Unexpectedly, as second sister Su Weisheng said, the prince's mansion is truly hiding top-notch experts in the world from the Chao Pavilion. Although he didn't know the identities of these three individuals, Su Xiaoyan also guessed that none of them were ordinary. The tone was very respectful, even bowing to the three people in a formal manner. Unfortunately, he has not been in the martial arts world for long. If he had some experience in the martial arts world, he could probably guess who these three masters are. As soon as Su Xiaoyan spoke, the three of them finally noticed Su Xiaoyan not far away. "Su Xiaoyan, who are you from that Su cripple?" The old man with sheepskin fur picked up another bowl of wine and asked as he drank, "Report to the senior, that Su cripple is my son." Upon hearing Su Xiaoyan's words, the young man in a white robe who had just climbed up from the ground couldn't help but laugh and said, "Calling my old man Su Jizi is quite interesting to you. Come on, what are you doing here? You're not here to be beaten, are you?" Upon hearing what the young man in the white robe said, Su Xiaoyan couldn't help but glance at the young man in the black robe who was still sitting there sipping wine. He quickly said, "No, Xiaoyan's cultivation is not good enough to make a fool of himself in front of his seniors. Today, I have something to ask for your help with." Su Xiaoyan's tone was quite respectful. He knew that in front of such a martial arts master, any secular power was a joke. With just the means demonstrated by these three people, if they wanted to take action against Emperor Dali, they would probably be killed casually. "Let me tell you what, I have eaten your Su family's rice for over a decade, and today I should repay your kindness." The old man with sheepskin fur yawned and even used his fingers to pick his feet. Upon hearing this, Su Xiaoyan couldn't help but instinctively look at the young man in black sitting there. Based on the description of his second sister and the strength he had just demonstrated, it was obvious that this was the person he was truly looking for. Su Xiaoyan hesitated for a moment before speaking, "Senior, I want to go out of the martial arts world to the city of Emperor Wu. I hope you can follow me. Wudi City is second in the world, Wang Xianji." As soon as Su Xiaoyan finished speaking, he heard a loud voice behind him. Su Xiaoyan turned around and saw that the young man in black had spoken at this moment. Upon hearing this, Su Xiaoyan's breathing became rapid as he waited for the response from the young man in black. The young man in black didn't hesitate at all and immediately spoke, "I won't go." "Not going." Upon hearing these words, Su Xiaoyan suddenly felt somewhat disappointed. How could this young man in black refuse him without even thinking? Why? Su Xiaoyan instinctively asked, thinking to himself, was it because he was afraid of Wang Xianji that he didn't want to go out of the mountain? Why? From Daliang to thousands of miles in the East China Sea, where is there such a comfortable place to stay at the Tingqiao Pavilion? Su Xiaoyan couldn't help but be speechless upon hearing these words. What strange reason is this big shot not going to Emperor Wu City because he is too lazy to go? Are you joking? That's the head of Emperor Wu City, Wang Xianji, who has been suppressing the entire Dali dynasty for decades and cannot lift his head. How many people in the martial arts world, even if they knew they would die, would go to Emperor Wu City to learn Wang Xianji's ultimate moves? But this person is so good that the reason why he didn't go to Emperor Wu City was that he was too lazy to go. However, no matter what the reason was, Su Xiaoyan knew there was no need to invite the other party so decisively. Because Su Xiaoyan knew that these three individuals should be like Daliang Kuqin, not household slaves who could be arbitrarily instructed. So he stood up and said respectfully, "Excuse me for bothering some seniors. Xiaoyan will bid farewell first." Su Xiaoyan went downstairs with a hint of disappointment. As soon as he left the Tingqiao court, he saw a slightly hunched figure standing by the lake. "Xiaoyan, how are you doing?" Su Xiao saw Su Xiaoyan coming out and quickly approached him to ask. "I said Su Jizi, where did you find your ancestors?" Su Xiaoyan gave Su Xiao a kick and gritted his teeth, saying. As early as in the attic, Su Xiaoyan had been suppressing his temper. Surprisingly, there was someone in the Su family who didn't know him, the crown prince of the Su family. After the father and son pursued each other for a while, Su Xiao repeatedly begged for mercy and gasped for breath, saying, "Xiaoyan, do you know who the two people who bent down and helped the gallbladder in the Chao Pavilion were just now? Who is it?" Su Xiaoyan quickly asked, curious about the identities of these people. That one-armed old man was actually the famous Li Jianxin in the martial arts world back then. The young man who used the gun was Su Yanbing, the junior brother of the gun king Wang Xiu. His strength was only stronger than that of the gun immortal, rising above the blue and surpassing the blue. Sleeping in bed. Su Xiaoyan was suddenly shocked and couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief as he thought of his previous respectful gesture. If it weren't for this respectful attitude towards these two big shots, he probably wouldn't have walked out just now, but would have come out sideways. However, when Su Xiaoyan reached this point, he couldn't help but let out a thud in his heart. These two identities are so terrifying. What about that mysterious young man in black? What is the level of strength of the two masters who can shake back the martial arts world without making a move? Su Jizi, what is the identity of the one wearing black? Upon seeing Su Xiaoyan ask a question, Su Xiao immediately saw Su Xiaoyan's plan and immediately pointed it out. "Humph, you kid, don't have any ghostly thoughts. Only by relying on loyalty can you hire that one." Upon hearing this, Su Xiaoyan couldn't help but sneer and feel unhappy in his heart, saying, "Friendship. What kind of friendship does that person have with my Su family? As soon as I asked him for help, he didn't even think about it and immediately refused. Why are you so lazy to go? I think it's just." Su Xiaoyan was afraid that he hadn't spoken yet, but he was quickly stopped by Su Xiao. With that fearful expression on his face, Su Xiaoyan felt that Su Xiao wouldn't even face Emperor Dali. "Stinky kid, be cautious." Su Xiao made a silent gesture and immediately pretended to be mysterious, saying, "Who said my Su family has no relationship with that person? He has an engagement with your second sister Su Weisheng." "What?" Upon hearing this, Su Xiaoyan was suddenly shocked and almost stumbled and fell to the ground. "What is it?" "That's actually his future brother. Law Su Xiaoyan." Thinking back to the identities of the other two, Su Xiaoyan's heart became even more uneasy. That's the Li Lao sword god who shook the entire Song dynasty half a year ago, and the remaining one is also from an extraordinary background. It's the spear immortal junior brother. Back then, Gun Immortal once alone invaded the Liao territory for thousands of miles and safely returned to the Song dynasty. This Gun Immortal's junior brother is definitely extraordinary. Not to mention, even Su Jizi gave Su Yanbing a rating of being more outstanding than Blue. And his brother Law is stabilizing these two people. Su Xiaoyan immediately turned his head and ran towards the Tingqiao Pavilion. This brother Law has been recognized by Su Xiaoyan. Chapter 5. Swordsmanship ranking appears, shocking the world. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5 Swordsmanship ranking appears, shocking the world. At this moment, the top floor of Tingqiao Pavilion. Son of the Su family, I'll go downstairs first. Li Lao Jianshan picked up a can of wine and then prepared to go downstairs unsteadily. Brother Su Bai, Yanbing will come back tomorrow to seek advice. Su Yanbing arched his hand and was also preparing to bid farewell. Lao Jianshan, wait a moment. A voice suddenly sounded from behind, and Li Lao Jianshan's mind moved. He immediately caught an object thrown in mid-air. This is a pill that can revive a severed arm. It's all up to the old sword god himself whether it's used or not. Upon hearing these words, Li Lao Jian was taken aback and glanced at the pill in his hand, his eyes full of thoughts. Su Bai looked at Li Lao Jian's reaction in her eyes and had a rough idea in her heart. It seems that Li Lao Jianshan has not yet recovered from the past events, but today he gave this pill to Li Lao Jianshan. When Li Lao Jianshan comes out of his inner demons, this pill will naturally come in handy. Su family kid, thank you very much. Li Jianshan naturally knew that this was Su Bai's good intentions. Although he still hasn't overcome his inner demons, Su Bai's actions have given him a chance to return to the peak of martial arts. Old man, since everything has abandoned you, then martial arts will reach its peak. Su Bai said to the old sword god, while Su Yanbing beside him eagerly looked at Su Bai in front of him. Brother Su Bai, what about mine? Seeing Su Bai's delayed response, Su Yanbing finally couldn't sit still and wanted to ask Su Bai for some benefits. Oh, no. Su Bai said in a calm tone, you should leave some room for others to survive. Su Yanbing coughed lightly twice, and Su Bai didn't give him anything. Surprisingly, it was because he was too strong. Anyway, it's not unacceptable either. Li Lao Jian and Su Yanbing saw that Su Bai had the intention of seeing off guests, but they didn't stay much. After all, everyone is in the Prince Liang's mansion, and daily sparring is a common occurrence. After meeting Su Bai, Su Yanbing and Li Lao Jianshan both asked themselves about their profound understanding of martial arts. With Su Bai as an expert to feed their skills, they can be said to have benefited a lot. Although Su Yanbing is still being beaten the hardest, he can feel that his strength has skyrocketed once again after leaving the Prince Liang's mansion. Li Lao Jian was even more shocked in his heart, because on the path of swordsmanship, Su Bai even walked further than him. Since that's the case, then the two of us will bid farewell and come back tomorrow to seek advice. Li Lao Jian and Su Yanbing left the top floor of Tingqiao Pavilion. Su Bai walked to the window and saw Su Xiao standing by the lake, enjoying the scenery. In the blink of an eye, I have been in this world for 20 years. He had originally traveled through time, across the heavens, but unexpectedly stopped in this world of martial arts that is 8% similar to the snow world. Before coming to this world, Su Bai had already crossed the world of Xianxia and became the Wine Sword Immortal among Xianjian, entering the night world, becoming the Willow White in the night, entering the three worlds of the Immortal Sword, becoming Jingtian. With these first three worlds as the foundation, even in this high martial arts world with a bit of fantasy martial arts, I am still a dimensionality-reducing blow. It is an invincible existence. For over 20 years in this lifetime, Su Bai also roughly figured out the world he was in. In this world, martial arts are revered. From low to high, martial arts can be divided into 9 levels to 1 level. On top of 1 level, there are 4 realms. Entering the Tao, immortality, heaven and earth, and Immortals. The world is surrounded by various kingdoms, and the Central Plains imperial dynasties include the Tang, Song, Ming, Qin, and Li, each occupying its own territory. There are also natural obstacles between the various Central Plains imperial dynasties, which are beyond the reach of martial arts experts. And Subai is located in the Dali dynasty, one of the many Central Plains imperial dynasties. The Dali dynasty almost unified half of the country with the help of Su Xiao alone. To the north of Dali, there is still the North Mang standing tall, separated by a Wangyang in the east and facing the Tang dynasty across the sea. In the middle, there is a deep abyss that cannot be crossed by experts in the long habitat, and cannot be crossed by experts in the realm of heaven and humanity. To the west of Daliang lies the endless wilderness of the dungeon, facing Qin. Due to the existence of these natural dangers, it is difficult for the major Central Plains emperors to engage in military conflicts, and only occasional martial arts experts maintain communication between countries. As for why he stayed at Tingqiao Pavilion, it was because when Su Bai realized that he couldn't do without this world, he happened to meet Su Xiao. At that time, it was the end of the reign of Emperor Dali, and Su Xiao, who was almost in his 60s, had also become an old and refined person. Even though Su Bai had restrained all his aura, Su Xiao still caught a glimpse of Su Bai's extraordinary qualities. He directly invited Su Bai into the Su mansion, and Su Bai was also happy to find a place to hang out. Therefore, for the past 10 years, Su Bai has been staying in the Tingqiao Pavilion. Dong dong dong. Su Bai was thinking that at this moment, there was a rather rapid sound of footsteps coming from the staircase. Before seeing the person, a voice suddenly came. "Brother-in-law, help me. Brother-in-law, help me." Su Bai had an inexplicable expression on her face. "What's the situation?" Someone called her brother-in-law. "Young master, it's Su Xiaoyan. Do you want him to come up?" Qingyao also looked inexplicable. Su Xiaoyan just claimed to be a younger generation. How could he call him brother-in-law in the blink of an eye? But Su Xiaoyan shouted fiercely again, and Qingyao had no choice but to ask Su Bai beside him. Just as Su Bai was about to speak, a towering, majestic voice suddenly roared in. In the void, a sudden mutation arises. Countless golden lights surged above the 9 heavens, as if golden raindrops were falling from the 9 heavens. What happened here? Who wants to move my Daliang Wang mansion? How could this be the means of mortals? Is it the banishment of immortals from heaven to the mortal world? In the mansion of the Prince of Daliang, countless domestic slaves and hidden experts all exclaimed in shock. Seeing this terrifying vision, their hearts were filled with inexplicable shock. Su Bai stood by the window, watching the continuously falling golden light rain on the horizon, with a slight frown on her brow. Qingyao stood beside Su Bai, also looking towards the direction of the sky. Su Xiaoyan also leaned over and looked at the horizon. He couldn't help but exclaim in shock, "What's wrong with this? How could such a strange phenomenon appear in the sky?" Almost everyone was startled by this terrifying vision at this moment, only to see an old man with one arm jump onto the eaves of Tingqiao Pavilion, gazing in the direction of the sky. But at this moment, there is once again a great change in heaven and earth. The countless golden light and rain condensed into a golden painting, slowly spreading between heaven and earth. Everyone looked at the scene in front of them in shock, taking a deep breath. In the vast expanse of golden light, a few large characters slowly coalesced on the golden scroll, and upon seeing that line of handwriting, everyone was even more amazed. Gold inscriptions appeared one after another, and the horizon began to condense lines of text. Heaven and earth open, golden list condensed, the immortals sat fishing for the fortune of the human world. Today, the fortune of the heavenly Tao has arrived, and the golden list of the great Tao has opened. The golden list of the great Tao stands, and the world Kendo list is born. Inventory of the top 15 swordsmanship strongest in the world. Chapter 5. Swordsmanship ranking appears, shocking the world. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5 Swordsmanship ranking appears, shocking the world. At this moment, the top floor of Tingqiao Pavilion. Son of the Su family, I'll go downstairs first. Li Lao Jianshan picked up a can of wine and then prepared to go downstairs unsteadily. Brother Su Bai, Yanbing will come back tomorrow to seek advice. Su Yanbing arched his hand and was also preparing to bid farewell. Lao Jianshan, wait a moment. A voice suddenly sounded from behind, and Li Lao Jianshan's mind moved. He immediately caught an object thrown in mid-air. This is a pill that can revive a severed arm. It's all up to the old sword god himself whether it's used or not. Upon hearing these words, Li Lao Jian was taken aback and glanced at the pill in his hand, his eyes full of thoughts. Su Bai looked at Li Lao Jian's reaction in her eyes and had a rough idea in her heart. It seems that Li Lao Jianshan has not yet recovered from the past events, but today he gave this pill to Li Lao Jianshan. When Li Lao Jianshan comes out of his inner demons, this pill will naturally come in handy. Su family kid, thank you very much. Li Jianshan naturally knew that this was Su Bai's good intentions. Although he still hasn't overcome his inner demons, Su Bai's actions have given him a chance to return to the peak of martial arts. Old man, since everything has abandoned you, then martial arts will reach its peak. Su Bai said to the old sword god, while Su Yanbing beside him eagerly looked at Su Bai in front of him. Brother Su Bai, what about mine? Seeing Su Bai's delayed response, Su Yanbing finally couldn't sit still and wanted to ask Su Bai for some benefits. Oh, no. Su Bai said in a calm tone, you should leave some room for others to survive. Su Yanbing coughed lightly twice, and Su Bai didn't give him anything. Surprisingly, it was because he was too strong. Anyway, it's not unacceptable either. Li Lao Jian and Su Yanbing saw that Su Bai had the intention of seeing off guests, but they didn't stay much. After all, everyone is in the Prince Liang's mansion, and daily sparring is a common occurrence. After meeting Su Bai, Su Yanbing and Li Lao Jianshan both asked themselves about their profound understanding of martial arts. With Su Bai as an expert to feed their skills, they can be said to have benefited a lot. Although Su Yanbing is still being beaten the hardest, he can feel that his strength has skyrocketed once again after leaving the Prince Liang's mansion. Li Lao Jian was even more shocked in his heart, because on the path of swordsmanship, Su Bai even walked further than him. Since that's the case, then the two of us will bid farewell and come back tomorrow to seek advice. Li Lao Jian and Su Yanbing left the top floor of Tingqiao Pavilion. Su Bai walked to the window and saw Su Xiao standing by the lake, enjoying the scenery. In the blink of an eye, I have been in this world for 20 years. He had originally traveled through time, across the heavens, but unexpectedly stopped in this world of martial arts that is 8% similar to the snow world. Before coming to this world, Su Bai had already crossed the world of Xianxia and became the Wine Sword Immortal among Xianxia, entering the night world, becoming the Willow White in the night, entering the three worlds of the Immortal Sword, becoming Jingtian. With these first three worlds as the foundation, even in this high martial arts world with a bit of fantasy martial arts, I am still a dimensionality-reducing blow. It is an invincible existence. For over 20 years in this lifetime, Su Bai also roughly figured out the world he was in. In this world, martial arts are revered. From low to high, martial arts can be divided into 9 levels to 1 level. On top of 1 level, there are 4 realms. Entering the Tao, immortality, heaven and earth, and immortals. The world is surrounded by various kingdoms, and the Central Plains imperial dynasties include the Tang, Song, Ming, Qin, and Li, each occupying its own territory. There are also natural obstacles between the various Central Plains imperial dynasties, which are beyond the reach of martial arts experts. And Su Bai is located in the Dali dynasty, one of the many Central Plains imperial dynasties. The Dali dynasty almost unified half of the country with the help of Su Xiao alone. To the north of Dali, there is still the North Mang standing tall, separated by a Wangyang in the east and facing the Tang dynasty across the sea. In the middle, there is a deep abyss that cannot be crossed by experts in the long habitat, and cannot be crossed by experts in the realm of heaven and humanity. To the west of Daliang lies the endless wilderness of the dungeon, facing the Qin. Due to the existence of these natural dangers, it is difficult for the major Central Plains emperors to engage in military conflicts, and only occasional martial arts experts maintain communication between countries. As for why he stayed at Tingqiao Pavilion, it was because when Su Bai realized that he couldn't do without this world, he happened to meet Su Xiao. At that time, it was the end of the reign of Emperor Dali, and Su Xiao, who was almost in his 60s, had also become an old and refined person. Even though Su Bai had restrained all his aura, Su Xiao still caught a glimpse of Su Bai's extraordinary qualities. He directly invited Su Bai into the Su mansion, and Su Bai was also happy to find a place to hang out. Therefore, for the past 10 years, Su Bai has been staying in the Tingqiao Pavilion. Dong dong dong. Su Bai was thinking that at this moment, there was a rather rapid sound of footsteps coming from the staircase. Before seeing the person, a voice suddenly came. "Brother-in-law, help me. Brother-in-law, help me." Su Bai had an inexplicable expression on her face. "What's the situation?" Someone called her brother.in.law. "Young master, it's Su Xiaoyan. Do you want him to come up?" Qingyao also looked inexplicable. Su Xiaoyan just claimed to be a younger generation, how could he call him brother.in.law in the blink of an eye? But Su Xiaoyan shouted fiercely again, and Qingyao had no choice but to ask Su Bai beside him. Just as Su Bai was about to speak, a towering, majestic voice suddenly roared in. In the void, a sudden mutation arises. Countless golden lights surged above the 9 heavens, as if golden raindrops were falling from the 9 heavens. What happened here? Who wants to move my Daliang Wang mansion? How could this be the means of mortals? Is it the banishment of immortals from heaven to the mortal world? In the mansion of the Prince of Daliang, countless domestic slaves and hidden experts all exclaimed in shock. Seeing this terrifying vision, their hearts were filled with inexplicable shock. Su Bai stood by the window, watching the continuously falling golden light rain on the horizon, with a slight frown on her brow. Qingyao stood beside Su Bai, also looking towards the direction of the sky. Su Xiaoyan also leaned over and looked at the horizon. He couldn't help but exclaim in shock, "What's wrong with this? How could such a strange phenomenon appear in the sky?" Almost everyone was startled by this terrifying vision at this moment, only to see an old man with one arm jump onto the eaves of Tingqiao Pavilion, gazing in the direction of the sky. But at this moment, there is once again a great change in heaven and earth. The countless golden light and rain condensed into a golden painting, slowly spreading between heaven and earth. Everyone looked at the scene in front of them in shock, taking a deep breath. In the vast expanse of golden light, a few large characters slowly coalesced on the golden scroll, and upon seeing that line of handwriting, everyone was even more amazed. Gold inscriptions appeared one after another, and the horizon began to condense lines of text. Heaven and earth open, golden list condensed, the immortal sat fishing for the fortune of the human world. Today, the fortune of the heavenly Tao has arrived, and the golden list of the great Tao has opened. The golden list of the great Tao stands, and the world Kendo list is born. Inventory of the top 15 swordsmanship strongest in the world. Chapter 6. Kendo Rank 15, Sword Demon Yen 13. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Kendo Rank 15, Sword Demon Yen 13. Above the 9 heavens, the scorching sun rises in the sky, and the sky shines brightly. In this world, countless people from Dali Beimang look up at the sky, only to see the golden light shining and disappearing, both virtual and real. The Daliang Prince's mansion, from its servants to a group of experts, is now filled with confusion in their eyes, unaware of what has happened. Only Su Bai stood by the window of the Tingqiao Pavilion, with a calm expression on his face, not even showing any confusion. As an existence that has gone through 3 lifetimes, Su Bai has never seen anything grand before. What's so strange about taking another inventory when all this outrageous thing about crossing the world has happened to oneself? My heart is still calm and calm. Since he arrived in this world, he has basically been lazy to listen to the Chao Gu, and he doesn't know much about the world's affairs, nor does he bother to learn. In Su Bai's eyes, this is just a group of ants fighting and killing, so what is there to pay attention to? At most, I only occasionally learned about the great leaving the Jianghu from the mouth of Li Laojian God. Even if the golden list appears now, for Su Bai, it's just a group of vegetable chickens pecking at each other. The Ming Dynasty, the Forbidden City. At the peak of the Forbidden City, two swordsmen are standing against the wind. There was a person dressed in white clothes who was more than snow, with loose hair and a carefree demeanor. His face was cold and stern, and his eyebrows looked like strangers were not to be approached. It's the Daming Sword God, Shimen Chueshue. Being able to confront Shimen Chueshue at the peak of the Forbidden City, the middle-aged swordsman with a decent aura on the opposite side has an extraordinary identity. This swordsman has a white face and a slight beard, dressed in a snow-white robe, with eyes like cold stars. It is the Lord of Baiyun City, Yi Gucheng. Two swordsmen in white are facing each other at the city gate, and the originally deadly battle has now come to an end. The reason lies in the terrifying vision that permeates heaven and earth. This vision can be seen all over the world, regardless of distance or age. The two of them, who were originally preparing for a life-and-death confrontation, now put aside their sharpness and looked at the strange sight appearing in mid-air with a strange expression on their faces. World Kendo Ranking. Can the two of them also make it on this list? The Tang Dynasty, Empress Wu Zhao stood in front of the Daming Palace, gazing at the golden lights appearing in the distant sky, and a strong interest rose in her eyes. The Tang Empire is rich in all corners of the world, and all nations come to court. We rely on a continuous stream of talents. Kendo List. Isn't it true that all those on this list are experts in swordsmanship and mysticism? Wu Zhao's heart was moved, and he already had a plan. Although the Tang Dynasty is prosperous now, it is actually a hidden current surging. In the dark, the traces of the Demon Gate never disappear, and these people in the Demon Gate are constantly thinking about how to overthrow the Tang Dynasty. But the Empress suffered from the lack of experts around her who could confront the Demon Gate. The court sent troops several times to eliminate them, but they all suffered heavy casualties. A master of swordsmanship and mysticism. That needs to be quickly recruited under the command of the Tang Dynasty. The Great Qin Empire, Mr. Guy, are you confident about entering the Kendo inventory? Ingzheng saw a sudden appearance in the sky and couldn't help but ask Guy Nye beside him. Guy Nye's expression remained unchanged, and he immediately spoke faintly, "Your Majesty, there are countless sword cultivators in this world. I am only slightly famous in the Great Qin Dynasty, and I dare not say that I am a first-class swordsman in the world." Upon hearing this, Ingzheng immediately smiled and said, "Mr. Guy is truly humble. Who knows that Mr. Gigu's sword technique is invincible in the world?" Dali, Tian City. In the majestic palace, Emperor Dali looked at the golden light on the horizon, and a hint of surprise flashed in his eyes. Staying on this throne for decades, although he has never taken a step out of the palace, countless court hawks and dogs have been conveying messages from the martial arts world to him. The Dali dynasty is renowned for its outstanding people and land spirit. Its martial arts have always been unparalleled in the world, and even a few land immortals have appeared. There have been rumors throughout the world that the heavenly gate, which connects heaven and earth, is hidden in the sky above Dali. It is precisely because of this that Dali's martial arts masters are like crucian carp crossing the river, and have never been lacking since ancient times. Emperor Dali boasted about his knowledge of the past and the present, but he had never seen such a terrifying vision before. What kind of means is this to make a fortune on the top of the 9 heavens? Can it be said that the folk legend is actually true, and this is really the handwriting of a celestial immortal? Swordsmanship masters, no matter which dynasty they appear in, will have a significant impact on the imperial power of that dynasty. Emperor Dali's gaze was distant, with a hint of concern in his eyes. Korean cat. After pondering for a moment, Emperor Dali finally spoke up. At this moment, behind the screen of the dragon chair, a person suddenly emerged from the darkness. This person has a pale complexion, with a hint of cruelty in his softness. This person is the top expert in the Dali Palace, the Korean cat. Although only in the realm of entering the Dao, this Korean cat is best at killing Xianxia by entering the Dao. Over the years, countless experts have fallen under the command of the Korean cat, but this old slave is also loyal to the Zhao family in Dali. He has become a master in the Taoist realm and even allowed the Zhao family's emperor to drive him away. The old slave is here. You immediately send someone to Longhu Mountain to deliver a message to that person. If anyone on the list appears in my Dali. Emperor Dali's eyes narrowed slightly, kill. At this moment, in the northern region thousands of miles away from Tian City, the Empress of Beimang is also paying attention to this mutation. Isn't this really done by some martial artists in the martial arts world? The courtier beside him quickly explained, Your Majesty, if there is really any movement in the martial arts world, how can there be no movement on the side of Tuoba Junshin? The Empress frowned slightly and said, So, is this a celestial anomaly? A group of courtiers called it. Unlike Emperor Dali, upon hearing this news, Empress Beimang did not show any signs of panic, and even felt a little relieved. She has long suppressed the martial arts world of Beimang. As long as she is still in power, Beimang's luck will not dissipate. In Beimang's martial arts world, there will be no more land immortals. Originally, the Empress Dowager of Beimang was worried that if this was a means created by the people of the martial arts world, it would represent a change in Beimang's luck. However, it seems that Tuoba's side did not respond, so the Empress put her heart back in her stomach. Donghai Wudi City, the originally calm city of Emperor Wu, suddenly experienced a gust of wind. The wind and clouds gather on the East China Sea, and huge waves surge into the sky. At the head of Emperor Wu's city, an elderly figure appeared. The old man stood with his hand on his back, and it was Wang Xianji, who held the top position in the world and claimed to be the second in the world. No one dared to call him the first in the world. As someone who has reached the pinnacle of martial arts, Wang Leiguai naturally knows some secrets that ordinary people do not know. Tianmen is indeed within the territory of Dali, or in other words, over the East China Sea. Wang Xianji suspected that this so-called golden list was a means created by the celestial beings. Just as Wang Xianji was speculating in his heart, he saw a sudden mutation occurring in the 9 heavens at this moment. The 10,000 zhang golden light suddenly exploded above the 9 heavens. Wang Xianji frowned, but suddenly a line of words appeared on the golden list. 15th place on the Kendo list. Yen 13. Chapter 7. Sword Chi crosses 30,000 miles. A sword shining cold. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. Sword Chi crosses 30,000 miles. A sword shining on the cold 19 continents. Sword Demon Yen 13, founder of the deadly 13 swords. At this moment, the golden leaderboard above the 9 heavens once again blooms with boundless brilliance, and a line of words appears. Immediately after, the golden light gradually gathered, and everyone vaguely saw a figure condensed by the golden light slowly emerging in the sky. Seeing this scene, the major rivers and lakes in the world suddenly exploded. Yen 13. If he were a sword demon, what would it be to seek defeat alone? How can the 13 deadly swords compare to the old man's Dugu 9 swords? There are countless people who use swords in the world, and there are more than just a few who love swords as much as their lives. What kind of person is Yen 13? How can he be called a sword demon, and how can he make it to the sword art list? The skilled swordsmen in various rivers and lakes are all dissatisfied and want to see what extraordinary things Yen 13 has. At this moment, in the sky, the golden chart suddenly shone brightly, and then gradually condensed into a picture in mid-air. Everyone was so shocked that their eyes widened, looking at the strange scenery in the sky. They were all inexplicably shocked in their hearts. Xindao, this is indeed not an ordinary means, but can actually condense such a scene in mid-air. Along with the appearance of the screen, lines of words reappear again and again in the picture: swordsmanship spanning 30,000 miles. One sword shines on 19 continents of cold. Immediately after, the figure formed by the condensed golden light gradually became clear. The rustling leaves of wood, a ray of sunset. In the picture, it is late autumn and boundless falling trees are rustling down. There is a person standing in the forest where fallen leaves are flying. This person has a cold temperament and is quiet and motionless. But just by seeing this picture, everyone can feel the endless killing energy contained in this person. Perhaps this is no longer a person, but a cold and ruthless killing machine. Yen has killed too many people in his life. What should be killed should not be killed. But this is the case in the martial arts world. Either I kill others, or others kill me. A sound exploded in the sky, clearly the voice of Yen 13. Upon hearing this monologue, a group of martial arts experts were all speechless in refutation. From Yen 13's cold and frosty eyes, everyone could see that what Yen 13 said was not false. The swordsman in black remained motionless, as if quietly waiting for something. This aura, although motionless, cannot conceal its sharpness. It is indeed a peerless swordsman. During the Ming dynasty, Mount Hua missed the cliff. Standing amidst the towering cliffs with a clear breeze, I couldn't help but shout out loud as I gazed at the scene that appeared above the 9 heavens. Although Yen 13 had not yet moved, and even this was just a picture that appeared before him, Feng Qingyang, who was also a top-notch swordsman, had already sensed Yen 13's extraordinary qualities. A top-notch swordsman, every subtle move carries a sharp sword intent. Even if he doesn't move, his gaze is like an unsheathed sword, making people tremble with fear. I don't know which one is stronger or weaker between my Dugu 9 swords and Yen 13's deadly 13 swords. In the sword tomb, the Dugu sword god laughed heartily, and the divine eagle beside him, which was 2 people tall, also emitted bursts of hissing. What is a demon? To cause trouble in the world is a demon, to spread charcoal to create creatures is a demon, to be infatuated with one path, and to fall into it is also a demon. As a sword god of the generation, my vision of seeking defeat alone has always been cruel. But after seeing Yen 13, Dugu Chioshi seemed to have a slight feeling of encountering a confidant. Such a state of mind, such sword intent, should be called a sword demon. Only those who are devoted to martial arts and persist in swordsmanship can appear as if they are crazy and intoxicated. The Dali dynasty, an old man with white beard and hair was looking at the carved sword belonging to Yen 13 in the picture, drooling greedily. Good sword, good sword. The sword-eating ancestor only felt that the sword in Yen 13's hand was like a top-notch delicacy in the world, and wished he could swallow it in one gulp and savor it carefully. For other martial artists in the world, this swordsmanship ranking may only depend on who the world's swordsmanship experts are, but for the sword-eating ancestor, this is simply a rare delicacy in the world. The 15th swordsman in the world, how delicious should their swords be? Which dynasty is Yen 13 from? My ancestor insists on meeting him. De Liang Wang Fu, in front of Ting Chao Gu, Li Laojian couldn't help but yawn as he watched the scene emerge from mid-air. Senior Li, what do you think of Yen 13's swordsmanship? Li Laojian glanced at the scene in mid-air and took another sip from his wine jug before lazily saying, "You have more sharpness, too fierce. Although you are unparalleled in killing, it is difficult to reach the pinnacle." After Li Laojian finished speaking, he didn't forget to summarize one sentence. To put it bluntly, it's not as good as me. However, it's not as good as me who had both arms back then. Li Laojian muttered to himself again, recalling the magical pill that Su Bai had given him before. Just laugh it off. If it had been a year ago, Li Laojian would have wanted to compete for the title of the strongest swordsman in the world. But now that his mood has changed and he has been neglected for decades, these external reputations have long been irrelevant to him. But now in the picture, Yan 13 lowered his head and glanced at the extremely sharp sword in his hand. It seemed like a light and agile sword had been stabbed, and there was not even a noticeable change. However, in the blink of an eye, it evolved into 1,000 variables on its own, flowing smoothly and naturally like flowing clouds and water. Lightly described, running like the wind. In the blink of an eye, 13 swords were stabbed. Every sword is an unparalleled killing move in time, with a series of moves. Even if someone can avoid the first sword, they can't avoid the continuous 13 swords. This swordsmanship is incredibly fierce. As soon as it is unleashed, it will unleash an endless killing aura, flooding people like a tide. After 13 swords were stabbed, the sword's momentum had reached its extreme. Yan 13 slowly withdrew his sword, but before turning around, there was a sudden change happening around him. Amidst the forest came roars, and the towering ancient tree, which could only be embraced by countless people, was cut off by the waist. In the distant forest, blood flowed like a river at this moment. Hundreds of people in black were all killed on the spot, with limbs and arms scattered all over the ground. From the screen, it seems like one can smell the overwhelming smell of blood. Yan 13 withdrew his sword and left, gradually dissipating the scene, leaving only a group of martial arts experts who are now shocked and inexplicable everywhere in the world. Swordsmanship spans 30,000 miles. With just one sword, it shines across 19 cold continents. The golden list is truly not deceiving me. Before the arrival of the person, the sword energy would kill from 100 miles away. I am convinced of these methods. The 15th place in the world swordsmanship ranking is not a false rumor. How many people in this world can take this deadly 13 swords? Countless martial arts masters are all inexplicably shocked. Today, seeing the terrifying power of the 13 deadly swords, all the martial arts masters have no doubts. What excites them even more is that this is only the 15th place on the swordsmanship list. What kind of terrifying presence would it be to be at the top of the swordsmanship chart? However, at this moment, a sudden change occurred on the screen, and everyone couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. Yan 13, surprisingly going into seclusion. Chapter 8. Divine Yan 13. Deadly 15 Swords. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8 Divine Yan 13. Deadly 15 Swords. Yan 13, I want to retire at the peak. A group of martial arts experts couldn't help but exclaim, and various doubts and perplexities followed. Peak retreat. Perhaps invincible loneliness. Or perhaps it is because of the higher level of martial arts that one comprehends in seclusion. A group of martial arts experts were all speculating, but soon, they saw another image in the picture on the horizon. In a reed marsh, a solitary boat floats on the water. At this moment, there is an old man wearing a bamboo hat and a raincoat, with white hair like frost all over his head. The old man was about to die, almost like a dying man, as if there was a possibility of life extinguishing at any moment. But at this moment, he was constantly sharpening a wooden stick with a firewood knife in his hand. Obviously, this old man is not an ordinary fisherman fishing in the reed marsh, because a fisherman would not have such stable hands as a rock. Gradually, I saw the wooden stick gradually taking shape, in the shape of a sword. This wooden sword was about 3 feet and 7 inches in length. The old man held the sword in his hand, as if he had seen an old friend who had been away for many years, but his eyes seemed to carry a hint of fear and sadness. The old man clenched his sword hilt and slowly stood up. At that moment, the old man's originally hunched body suddenly became straight, as if he had transformed into a different person. It's like an old sword that has been sealed in dust for many years, suddenly shaking off the dust on its body and emitting a captivating light again. Yan 13. Countless experts in the martial arts world were shocked. It is unknown how long has passed, and the former first swordsman has become a dying old man. If it weren't for his sword-wielding momentum, many people wouldn't be certain that the person in front of him was actually a terrifying swordsman with unparalleled momentum compared to the one just now. Everyone didn't know how many years Yen 13 had lived in seclusion, let alone why this scene appeared on the gold list. Is this the scene before Yen 13's death? How much sword intent can this old man, who has only stepped into the coffin with half a foot, still retain? Everyone was discussing, but at this moment, there was a faint figure in the reed marsh. You knew I was here long ago. A voice came from the reed marshes, but Yen 13 remained calm and said, I recognize you, it must be Xiaoxiaofeng. You've seen me before. The young man across from him was somewhat surprised and immediately drew his sword, facing Yen 13 in front of him. No, I see that the sword in your hand already has a murderous aura. The two of them didn't say much and almost started at the same time. Just like the rapid lightning and lightning, the movement of the two people drawing their swords cannot be seen clearly, and they have already taken action at the same time. Almost at the same time, these two suddenly stood up in the air, two swords clashing and tearing apart one reed after another. But these two people seem to be completely indifferent, and in each other's eyes, there are only swords in each other's hands. The unity of man and sword is the highest realm of using swords, the unity of man and sword. In the sword tomb, seeing their current state, Dugu's sword god couldn't help but shout hello. The state of unity between man and sword is something that few people in the world can achieve. It is a state of selflessness, where life and death, even one's own body, are disregarded. At this moment, the only thing in their eyes is the sword. The only thing that exists between heaven and earth is the opponent's sword. Even though the flat boat was cut in half, neither of the two people in the picture cared at this moment. Dugu Qiubai knew that in the eyes of the two of them at this moment, everything was nothing but the other's sword still existed. This is a wonderful realm that can be easily achieved even if one seeks defeat alone. The beauty of it often immerses oneself in it, because in the state of unity between man and sword, there is no place in this world that cannot be gone, and nothing that is constantly chopped. At this moment, in the screen, the sky was filled with blood and rain, and their swordsmanship was surging, as if there were endless sword lights and endless variables lurking within it. Finally, after countless moves, the two finally stopped. 13 deadly swords, all the moves have been used up. Is Yen 13 about to lose? Yen 13 is an old and decadent person, and Xie Xiaofeng's understanding of swordsmanship on the opposite side is not inferior to him. I'm afraid Yen 13 will be more or less unlucky this time. No, he just used his 14th sword, which is obviously the latest sword move that Yen 13 has learned in his years of seclusion. A group of experts were discussing, but surprisingly, even with the 14th sword, Yen 13 was unable to defeat Xie Xiaofeng on the opposite side. Xie Xiaofeng's sword completely suppressed Yen 13, and all the martial arts experts knew that the victory between the two was already divided. The two swords were in contact, but Yen 13's sword was completely suppressed by Xie Xiaofeng and he couldn't use any moves at all. But just as everyone thought the battle was over, a strange wave rang out again on Yen 13's wooden sword. The swaying reeds around were all washed away by the invisible sword gang at this moment. What was originally moving was now completely stationary. At this moment, the world seems to be completely silent, devoid of any vitality. Only the sword in Yen 13's hand was shaking. At this moment, Xie Xiaofeng was inexplicably frightened. The sword in his hand had been stared at tightly and could not undergo any further changes. This sword is only for killing. Seeing that scene in the picture, countless people's hearts were filled with such thoughts. Yen 13's sword seemed to interpret what death is. Still, heaven and earth are fading, and all the vitality around us is stagnant at this moment. The terrifying sword aura permeated the world, as if it was about to devour everything in the world, along with Xie Xiaofeng on the opposite side. The wooden sword in Yen 13's hand was still trembling, like a deadly ghost, never stopping, and never stopping. 15 swords. It's actually the 15th sword. In all the rivers and lakes of the world, countless experts looked at the earth-shattering sword in the picture with horror on their faces. Yen 13 unexpectedly realized the 15th sword. Everyone knows that after this sword, the deadly sword will have no further sword moves, because this 15th sword represents the end in death. The towering sword power sweeps across the world. At this moment, the battle circle between Yen 13 and Xia Xiaofeng seems to have formed its own space. Everything outside is as usual, and inside it is like the purgatory of the Shura. Endless great terror is shrouded in it. Xia Xiaofeng is also the ultimate swordsman in swordsmanship, let alone he is so young. Unfortunately, Jiang is still old and spicy. How many people in this world can force out the 15 swords of more than 13 Yen people? This battle can be said to be a perfect match, truly a delightful sight. Undoubtedly, it is the 13th year of the Yen dynasty. In the midst of the withered years, one can still use such a devastating sword move to destroy heaven and earth. Just as everyone was discussing, an unexpected situation emerged. In the picture, before the Yen 13 swords fell, the painting above the 9 heavens suddenly came to an end and disappeared. P.S. Save 100000 manuscripts, not too many beeps, just explode on the first day. Finally, kneel down and beg for a reward and comment. If there is one, continue to make 10 more explosive tomorrow. How does Yen 13 compare to my brother? In Law in Chapter 9. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. How does Yen 13 compare to my brother? In Law in Chapter 9. This golden list is just to my taste, isn't it? What was the final battle between Yen 13 and Xia Xiaofeng? There's no need to ask, Yen 13's final 15th sword is called Death. Even if Xia Xiaofeng had the ability to connect with the heavens, he couldn't escape Yen 13's shocking sword. The heroes of the martial arts world were discussing, but no one expected that this final battle would come to an abrupt end and end like this. Just as everyone was puzzled, a line of text gradually appeared on the painting scroll above the sky. Yen 13. Daming Sword Demon, Chongqing Realm Swordsman. Claimed to be the 13 deadly swords. With the appearance of this line of words, the deadly sword technique of Yen 13's move appeared once again on the 9 heavens. In the end, the earth-shattering 15th sword made countless martial arts experts take a breath of cold air, and their hearts were filled with fear. Using the 15th sword, this Yen 13 may not be able to live long and kill the great longevity habitat, or even kill the experts in the heaven and human realm. In the Ming dynasty, Mount Hua missed the cliff. The gentle breeze caresses my long beard, and my mind is filled with endless and never-ending sword moves. Regardless of his cultivation level, when it comes to his swordsmanship, Feng Qingyang realizes that Yen 13's swordsmanship is not inferior to his. However, during the Ming dynasty, when did you hear of the existence of this deadly 13 swords? Just as the wind was clear and uncertain, I saw another change on the gold list. In the final battle, Yen 13 was unable to wield that sword. The 15th sword could only bring destruction and death. Yen 13 did not want this swordsmanship to be passed down and committed suicide. What? Yen 13 committed suicide. Swordsmanship is just a way to kill people. What if one sword subdues 1,000,000 corpses? This Yen 13 is truly pitiful and ridiculous. This sword is cut out as a demon, and Yen 13's move is a hero. In the end, he can still stick to his true intention. How many people in this world can do it? Unexpectedly, everyone thought Yen 13 had created a earth-shattering move, but instead of using his sword, he chose to commit suicide. How tragic and admirable is this? Daming, Hulong Mountain Villa. Zhu ignored standing in front of the hall, and the people behind him, such as Gui Haidao, were also moved. If it weren't for Yen 13, I don't know what the current scene in the Ming dynasty would be like. Zhu ignored a sigh. If it weren't for Yen 13's choice to completely bury the deadly sword technique, I don't know what kind of bloody storm would be stirred up in the Ming dynasty. This glass of wine. To the great hero Yen. At this moment, at the peak of the Forbidden City, two white-clad swordsmen are still facing each other. Unfortunately, Yi couldn't learn the skills of Yen Daxia in his lifetime, sighed Yi Gucheng. When he heard that Yen 13 was from the Ming dynasty, Yi Gucheng was slightly excited. I thought that after today's battle against Xianxia, there might still be a chance to fight against Yen 13 in the future, but unexpectedly, Yen 13 chose to commit suicide when he was about to reach the pinnacle of swordsmanship. Unfortunately, the strongest sword in the world is missing one person. Brother Ximen, the only one who has reached the pinnacle of the Ming dynasty's swordsmanship is probably one of us. Yi Gucheng looked at Xianxia across from him, and for a moment, a feeling of empathy surged in his heart. Who is the number one in the world, is it important? Xianxia's voice remained cold as she looked at Yi Gucheng with a calm expression. Dali Dynasty, Prince Liang's mansion. Let me tell you what, this person is too fierce and not a perfect swordsman. If we continue to practice according to his path, we will have an accident sooner or later. Li Laojian took another sip of wine, and now his eyes were a bit drunk and hazy. However, in the final moments, he can rein in his horse from the cliff, but he is still a true swordsman. As Li Laojian said, it was natural that Yen 13 chose to pull out his sword and commit suicide in the end. Old man Li, how do you say that? I see that his last sword already means touching the threshold of the heavenly and human realm. Su Yanbing doesn't practice swordsmanship, only repairs his spear. The understanding of swordsmanship is naturally not comparable to that of Li Laojian, who excels at the pinnacle of swordsmanship. Li Laojian said that the Yen 13 Cliff's Lo Ma Fong was a true swordsman, but Su Yanbing couldn't understand it. If a gun practitioner could come up with such a move, it would be too exciting. Gunner, domineering. Back then, his senior brother had countless undead souls under his gun, which led to the achievement of the title of a generation of gun immortals, and now, following Su Bai's side, my niece Qingniao, although her marksmanship is as authentic as Wang Xiu's, is always lacking in meaning. Even the instant gun left by her senior brother, Qingniao, cannot fully control it. As for the reason, it's also very simple. Qingniao didn't have so many lives on his hands, so naturally he didn't have such a terrifying murderous aura. For gun repairmen, more killing energy is better, but why does Mr. Li say that Yen 13's suicide is a good thing? Yanbing, do you still remember how your senior brother died? Li Laojian sighed with a deep gaze. Old man Li, what do you mean? Su Yanbing's expression froze for a moment. His senior brother Wang Xiu, who had accumulated too much killing intent on his body, eventually became obsessed and died. Too much is too late. He used that move to kill Xie Xiaofeng, although he could skip the great Chongqing and directly enter the realm of heaven and humanity, but by then, he might not be him anymore. Li Laojian spoke calmly, and in the face of the overwhelming killing intent, it was not difficult to strike that sword. What was difficult was that, like Yen 13, he remained clear at the last moment, and even after weighing his options, he resolutely chose to commit suicide. This Yen 13 can be called a great hero, and his heart and nature are admirable even to someone like Li Laojian, who has read all the sales. Su Xiaoyan listened to the discussions between Su Yanbing and Li Laojian. Although he was confused and couldn't understand what Li Laojian was saying, Su Xiaoyan knew that what these two masters were discussing must be related to a higher level of martial arts realm. Bully, that's it. But what frustrates Su Xiaoyan is that Qingniao has been guarding the stairs on the top floor, and his family card seems to have no effect at all. The Su Bai on the roof is still indifferent. Brother-in-law, you have to save me. After seeing Yen 13's terrifying sword, Su Xiaoyan suddenly felt a chill all over his body. The cultivation and growth habitat of Yen 13 are so terrifying. What would be the existence of Wang Leiguai, who came second that day? No, this time we're going to Emperor Wu City, we must bring Su Bai along. Don't call me anymore, I'm going to be annoyed to death by you. Su Yanbing beside him impatiently said when he saw Su Xiaoyan talking again. Li Laojian still leaned against the window to drink, while his master behind him remained silent, as if he was studying a chess game. Su Xiaoyan closed his mouth and glanced at Su Yanbing and Li Laojian standing by the window, suddenly having a plan in mind. These two are also the big shots of the time, and they look much more talkative than Su Bai. Su Xiaoyan was about to go up and get close to it. After thinking for a moment, he spoke up and asked, Li Lao Jian Shen, how does Yen 13 compare to my brother? Law. P.S. Save 100000 manuscripts, not too many beeps, just explode on the first day. Finally, kneel down and beg for a reward and comment. If there is one, continue to make 10 more explosive tomorrow.